I should probably adjust the camera a little bit. Just realized how off center I was.
I didn't realize that.
You did or did not?
I did not.
Oh, well, that's okay. We're already live, so that's all on the record. It's all for everyone to see. Welcome, everyone. This is Andre's Restart. That you hear is Brandon, my co-host, my friend,
What's
and
up?
tonight we're going to talk about our thoughts on the end of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. There will be spoilers. If that is
yes.
not obvious, because we're talking about the ending of the game, and the spoilers is in the thumbnail. I mean, it says spoilers, and it's in the title. So hopefully
Yes,
that's
we're talking
enough.
about everything.
So hopefully that is enough warning. There won't be any gameplay. I mean, there's this, but
yeah.
that's not spoilers. That's just my TV on with the game on. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about the end of the game. So this is your final spoiler warning. If for whatever reason you still haven't realized that there may be spoilers here. Now, before I jump into things, if you guys could let me know in the chat how everything looks and sounds. I know not as many people are going to be watching this because it's spoiler heavy, but, you know, this is going to be out there for everyone to see, and it's just for forever. So whenever you do eventually beat the game, speaking to you in the future, viewer, this will be applicable. This will be okay to watch once you beat the game. But, yeah, hopefully everything looks and sounds okay. But please, if anyone hears any sort of weird echoing or things sound too quiet or too loud, let me know. I will adjust that. And yeah, I think for the beginning, Brandon and I are just gonna talk, but we'll come back to the chat and we'll do a little bit of Q&A. But Brandon, I know you just beat the game a couple days ago.
Yes.
So how about you just start things off for us? Like, what was your initial reaction to the end of the game? How did you feel about it?
Should I talk like how I felt about the final boss, or just like the ending of the game?
Listen, we got to start somewhere, so just say something, and then we'll go from there.
I guess my final thoughts of the game was this was a lot better than Breath of the Wild, but not necessarily in the ways that I thought that they were gonna go. It was very different. It left me feeling like I wanted more of the directions that they went in some places, and less in others. I feel like the game was both very disappointing and very like exactly what I wanted. It's very I'm very split on how I feel, I guess, was how I felt at the end of the game. Very split on the direction that they went.
Okay. I do have some questions there, but before I get to that, I've noticed just in that last series of lines you provided me, it almost sounds like there's a little bit of like a fuzziness when you're talking. I don't know if that's like a different microphone you're using or like a background.
I can turn down my air conditioner. It's been hotter in my room, so I have it on a higher. Do you want me to turn it down?
I don't know. But whenever you talk for more than like 2 seconds, I hear like a buzzing in the background. I don't want.
I mean, if it's bad enough, I can turn it down. It'd just be hotter for me.
I don't want you to suffer. I don't want you to suffer. So
I'll just I'll just drink a little bit of that.
I don't think it's that bad. But I know that you are particular about audio. So if you listen back to this, you're like, oh no, right? So I'm just letting you know. But yeah. But otherwise, Zelda fan show channel and Venetus are saying that everything looks and sounds good. So that is promising. But yeah, if there's any sort of weird, I mean, Sheena's saying that they don't hear any sort of background noise coming from your mic, so I think we're good. It might just be on my end.
It might be covered by the
background music,
audio, music, and things like that.
Maybe, yeah, it's not that bad. But anyways, so yeah, tell me a little bit more about what are the parts that you weren't expecting that you want more of.
I think, because I thought that they would expand the story, like they kind of did, but I thought that they would tell the story in a different way. But after the beginning of the game, because the beginning of the game kind of leads you to believe that it's very much more hands-on with the story, because they kind of force you to do a whole story section where you like just walk around and like Zelda's
Right,
talking,
the
and I think
prologue.
you can, yeah, the prologue of the game. It's very non-Nintendo, I feel, in the way it does its story almost, because it's very much like a guided experience. It's very non-Breath of the Wild at the very least. It almost feels like the intro to like a PlayStation story experience, and then the rest of the game is very much exactly how Breath of the Wild was set up. I mean, there's 4 dungeons. You get a little bit of story at each of the locations, but the story told is just kind of the same over and over again each time. You get memories, which, to be fair, were a lot better than Breath of the Wild's, but still the same. And then you get some more cutscenes after. I mean, the only real way it adds over Breath of the Wild is the prologue, and then like kind of a little bit more story after the dungeons, and there's the fifth, the Spirit Temple, but it's not really much. And then you get more cutscenes at the end of the game, which were good. I thought all the cutscenes were great. I thought everything they gave me was amazing. I just feel like they didn't give that much more than Breath of the Wild, and that was one way I thought that they were really going to expand the game
Hmm.
more. But it
Interesting.
goes far beyond that. There's quite a few when I would say complaints personally, but I understand that the direction that they went is a super popular one. So I'm gonna be kind of the unpopular one here. I feel in the discussion. I think I'm gonna have more negative things to say about the game than you are.
Probably. Yeah. Because I have mostly praise to say about Tears of the Kingdom, but it isn't to say that one opinion is correct and one opinion is wrong. They're just opinions, and that's ultimately
Yep.
what they are.
And I want to
And
say that I do think the game is overall better than Breath of the Wild. I think part of the reason these are a lot of things are personal things from somebody who's played over 200 hours of Breath of the Wild. I think if I hadn't played Breath of the Wild, I would feel different. Also, if the game if I was a different kind of gamer, I'd feel different. This is just personal things and not necessarily things that I think are bad about the game. They're things that I don't enjoy about the game, if that makes
preferences.
sense. Yes,
You
preferences.
have
I'm not saying
preferences.
that the things they did are bad. I'm just saying that I don't enjoy some of the things they did as much as I hope
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you should definitely tell us what you think, but it would be nice if we could open up with some positivity about a game that we almost entirely like. But I mean, it is say what you
I'm
like,
just
right?
those are
But
genuinely my feelings after the end of the
sure,
game.
sure,
So,
and I mean, also I'll tell you that I see you're not alone in what you're thinking. I've seen actually a lot of people online share very similar sentiment to you. A lot of people feel like there are plot holes and retcons. I don't
mm,
feel as strongly about them. I think it still fits, but it really comes down to what you make of the game and what you're looking for in the game.
yeah.
Um, and I think you brought up a good point about just like this is how you feel about it, and it's not necessarily speaking to the quality. Because for me, I think one of my preferences is just kind of like exploring, experimenting, and I think that's
Yeah.
what where both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom excel, giving you this massive environment for you to explore and experiment with, right? So for me, they are some of my most highly enjoyed games ever. Like before Tears of the Kingdom came out, I decided finally that Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time, and Tears of the Kingdom is kind of Breath of the Wild on steroids. So
Mm, yeah.
it's a very
It
good
is.
game for me, right? It's definitely right up my alley. But I'll also tell you, in terms of the story, going into Tears of the Kingdom, my expectation was that it would improve upon how they told the story in Breath of the Wild. And I
Right.
do think that they did improve upon things. Now, from what you're saying, I think, I mean, we've had some of these discussions beforehand, just like in terms of like what you personally like from your games in terms of story. You like a very nice linear narrative. It's one of the reasons why you love the
Yeah.
Xenoblade games, and I love the Xenoblade games
Oh yeah.
in part for that reason. But Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are not linear narratives.
No.
They're not. So that, if that's what you're looking for, that's not what you're gonna get. Now, I do think that the story in Tears of the Kingdom has become more linear. There's some more linear elements. Like, there are some things that are locked behind a certain progression mark, right? Like, for example,
Right.
you can't enter the Spirit Temple until a certain point in the game.
Right.
There is these storms around the dragon's island, right? And you can clear the storms, and that you can. I mean, you can go there earlier if you want, but there are
Yeah,
some.
it's just very hard to see.
Yeah, but the point is that there are marked points of progression in the game. There's some level of linearity. There are some things that you're locked behind, like when you do the different dungeons, you gain abilities, and these abilities allow you to do certain things that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Like, for example, when you go to Death Mountain, and you'll find these weird looking rocks that have like these like red lines kind of streaking across them. Their only way to break them is with Yunubo's power, last I checked, and that's actually very much kind of like prior Zelda games where you needed an ability to progress. So those rocks can block some areas in the game, and you need that power. So they are introducing some level of linearity, some of those components we saw from prior Zelda games, but it's minimal. So you can still ultimately have that open exploration, right? And they do that with the story as well. Like the same way with Breath of the Wild, they had the memories where you have to explore the map to find them, and you have to get them all to get the full 100% ending. You still have to do the same thing with Tears of the Kingdom. But what I liked about Tears of the Kingdoms was actually a few things I liked about Tears of the Kingdoms that I feel are improvements. The geoglyphs are very clear to see, and they make it a lot easier to find the memories. Now, you might say, okay, but making it easier doesn't necessarily make it better. In many cases, I would agree, because I prefer challenging games. I love the Soulsborne games, for example. I love the Metroid games, for example, because those are challenging games. And I like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom because they are more challenging than prior Zelda games. But when it comes to experiencing the story, I think that's something that there shouldn't be that much difficulty behind, because it should be something that more people should be able to get to easily. A lot of people in Breath of the Wild did not collect all the memories because they are hard to find. Maybe you'll find a few for sure easily, but to find them all, that's a challenge without cheating or looking it up. So they made it a lot easier for people to experience the full story of Tears of the Kingdom. And I think that's an improvement. But in terms of the actual content of the story, what I liked about
way better.
And that's something that you noted. Like, even though you want more of it, what you're seeing in Tears of the Kingdom, you feel you like more than in Breath of the Wild. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And why is that?
I think the biggest reason is that the memories do tell you things about the game that you don't know. And there's like a big plot twist in it, obviously, with Zelda being. I mean, we're talking spoilers here, so I'm just gonna say it. Zelda being the light dragon.
We're so like used to like not spoiling that we're like still held back from saying things. But go on.
Still holding back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's a huge twist. I do kind of wish that you had to get the tiers in order. I was lucky with the sequence I happened to find them in, to where I didn't see the Zelda transformation till like basically the last part, so it was kind of a build-up. And I kind of was like, oh, are they actually gonna do it? Oh my gosh! And I didn't just see it like at the beginning, because I feel like that is very easy to do. I assume it's just to like spoil yourself with like the first memory.
Yeah.
But luckily that didn't happen to me.
It did happen to me. I mean, it depends on what you define as a spoiler, because what I saw So one of my first memories, I think it was like the second or third memory for me, was Sonya getting stabbed through the back with Ganon's
Ah,
fist, which, I mean, that's kind of like a like before I even really got to know Sonya well. She like I saw one scene with Sonya, and that was like the first memory, and then I see her getting wrecked.
yeah,
Um, I might be misremembering, but it was if it wasn't that scene, it was one of those like crazy final memories.
yeah. 'Cause that
And
seems kind of a two-parter.
yeah, it is. It is a two-parter. So, but I might. My point is, that I might be misremembering, but it was something to that level of drama, and it was when I was exploring the northern part of Hyrule. I might have been the Master
Hmm.
Sword that I. No, so the Master Sword one I think
And Swords of
is
Riches, though,
not the
right?
Sonya one. The Master Sword one I think is that one's even bigger. That's the
I
one.
don't remember.
That's like the penultimate one before she transforms. Um,
Ah,
so the very last memory before you beat the dragon, which is like the yeah. So actually, it was that one. So it was that one I saw. That was like my third memory. And
oof.
so when I experienced that, I was skeptical of the manner in which they were kind of presenting the story to us because I actually really like the memories. I think it's really great that they're kind of telling a story that while it's technically in the past, it's almost kind of happening concurrently with
Yeah.
Link's journey because we're learning about an active development of Princess Zelda who is pertinent to the story, right? As
Right.
opposed to characters that are dead and that was the past and that's it. Like the what's happening with Zelda, the memories are important to the overall narrative that's happening in the now, and that's something that
Right.
makes it more important to me, more valuable. But going back to my, I guess my critique is I at first I didn't like that I saw this really important memory that was one of the last memories you get early on because I felt like it kind of I was able to kind of piece together what was going to happen with this one memory, and I didn't like it. And I kind of wondered maybe they should have handled it a little bit differently. Now I understand that if you go to the Forgotten Temple, you can see the map, and I saw the map, and you can use the map to kind of mark where you should go next. But
Right.
if I'm just exploring the world organically, going from point A to B, and then I just kind of go to points of interest as I progress, right? So I'm going all over the place. I
Right.
don't want to intentionally. Oh, I haven't been there yet. I'm just gonna ignore it, and then just I want it to just explore the world, right? I don't want to have to go back to the Forgotten Temple back and forth just to make sure I'm going to the right memory. That kind of takes away from the experience for me personally.
Yeah. I didn't even know it told you which memory was the right. I knew it told you the
Hmm.
locations. I'll have to look at it closely again.
Yeah,
I wish that it was just which like when you got the first one, it gave you the first memory. Like whichever one you got first, it gave you the first one. Whichever one you got second, it gave you the second one. There's no real need to tie them into the different glyphs that they are, I feel. I assume there is some sort of tie-in, but they're not super obvious anyways, even though I assume there is one.
the symbols,
So
right?
why? Yeah, the
Yeah,
symbols, like what the symbol is versus what the memory is. I
right.
assume there's a connection if you think about it, but I
There
haven't.
is a subtle connection, but I agree. Like they could have just, I think they could have just allowed us to experience the memories in order,
Yeah,
regardless of which location we were in.
right.
I don't think that the symbolism matching is that significant, personally.
Yeah, I got the same
Yeah,
feeling.
I mean, it's ultimately a choice. Like, which one do you do? Do you have symbols that don't necessarily match extremely well, or do you just learn about what's to happen, right? Like in the manner in which it should happen, and it's tough to say, but I'll tell you that I remember when Breath of the Wild came out, and at first I was actually down with the idea of experiencing different scenes of the story out of order. Because I think it's okay. It's not necessarily a bad thing to experience a story out of order. One of my
Hmm.
favorite movies of all time does a great job of this, and it's Pulp Fiction. And I think part of the reason why Pulp Fiction is so great is because there's still mystery. Even though you may have got seen like one of the late like parts of the story from early on and vice versa, you're still trying to piece together what's going on. It's a mystery, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the story of Breath of the Wild, you know everyone's dead. So there's not much mystery. But still, there's some value in learning a context of things. And in Tears of the Kingdom, there's still mystery. And you're ultimately not sure what's going to happen because the final, most important scene doesn't happen until you collect them all. And so when I got that final, what I think is a memory 18, I'm not sure which one, but the final one when you beat the Tears of the Dragon quest, the one in the Spiral Island where the Light Dragon is right next to you, and you come to with all the silent princesses around you. That tier where you see the transformation, that's like the one memory that leaves everyone shook, right? Like that's like that big moment. And
that one was awesome.
And what I think is great about it is that you still have to experience all the primaries beforehand, and each memory is interesting in its own way. And while it may have been the case that I was somewhat sour because I saw one of the later memories early on, ultimately, once I pieced all the details together, and I had that one bigger, more important memory that came afterwards, that felt significant to me, and I think it kind of... It made me forget about that bitterness I had about experiencing one of those later memories, because the bigger, more important memory happened at the end, and that left me impacted, but in a good way. It left me feeling that the entire Tears of the Dragon quest was really, really good. And when I just think about that story, I think it's one of the best told stories in a Zelda game. Just looking at that part of Tears of the Kingdom. And it was significant. Like, have we ever seen this much, like... There's a lot of character dynamics that we see in Tears of the Kingdom that I'm not sure we've seen in any other Zelda game beforehand. Like, Sonya dying, right? Rauru grieving. Princess Zelda making the sacrifice for her entire kingdom and for Link. And, well, I assume, and I think many agree, but not everyone, of like this relationship they have with each other, right? And making all that sacrifice, having faith in him to stop Ganon, but then also Ganondorf having like this pure hatred, right? Like there's a lot of different character dynamics there that have varying levels of complexity that we're all kind of coming together. And I don't think we've seen something as complex in any prior Zelda game. And I think that I can even... Well, I mean, Skyward Sword, there's maybe some debate.
Skyward Sword is close.
Some, yeah.
And Twilight Princess has something. The problem is there's not a single... I can't think of a single other Zelda game that has all of it in, like, one. I can think of elements throughout the whole series where I can pinpoint from different games. But yeah, it all coming together in one is very nice. I think the memories part was really good. I do kind of wish it was told in a more linear way. I think that part was excellent. The only other real big complaint I had with the story would be I don't want to hear about the
imprisoning war.
Let
me tell you about the imprisoning war. Many years ago, there was this guy who was kind of a dick. He wanted to take over the world. He killed my wife.
Strong.
And yeah. So I got my friends and we tried to put him in a box. That was the imprisoning war. Here's my power.
Also, look, Zelda. Is that Zelda? What's going on with Zelda? You mean you know what's going on with Zelda? Oh, we're not going to ask you or act like anything's different.
There are some very video game moments. Like, I think there's a lot of things about Tears of the Kingdom that feel very advanced and help with your immersion. But then there are others where, to your point, like with some of the story, like after you complete the Tears of the Dragon quest, a lot of characters don't seem to acknowledge this. Or it's like Link,
it's very strange.
Link won't say what's going on. And now
there's other stuff in the game where they really do add a lot of context to the dialogue. Like if they point out something in the distance and it's like cloudy, they'd be like, it's kind of cloudy, but it's over there. But if it's clear skies, they'd be like, hey, look, you can see it right there, right there. And I think that kind of stuff is awesome and super immersive. So it's so jarring that they like put all this time into like procedurally calculating the NPC dialogue for if there's clouds in the way of your view. but they couldn't like update the story if you'd seen the memories
Yeah,
before you beat the
it is
dungeons.
weird because, like, for example, when you're in a stable and it starts raining, the character, not even like everywhere, if it's raining, characters will move and hide from the rain, and if you
Yeah, they go to
talk to
cover.
them, they have dialogue that points out, "Hey, it's raining." Like they're aware of the weather, and that's something that makes
Yeah,
the world feel like a living, breathing world. And
yeah, that's
sometimes,
great.
depending on what clothes Link is wearing, characters will acknowledge the clothing difference. Right? There's a few different things you can
Mhm.
wear
Yeah,
where characters will acknowledge. So, like when characters acknowledge things like this, but they don't acknowledge other elements, it can be a little off-putting. But it it depends, because it also may be the case that Link just doesn't want to say what's going on, or maybe Link is dumb. Maybe Link is experiencing the memories and he's like, "Oh, well, I'm not sure. That might not be a real memory. That could just be my mind playing tricks on me. I better not tell anyone." Right? Like, so I mean, I think there's room for interpretation, but I definitely see your point there.
I mean, if
I
you got all of them though, like,
Yeah,
come on.
I think that there maybe could have been something more done to help with some of the NPCs showing more of a consistency with the narrative. Um, Maybe that's just a localization issue. Maybe I don't know if maybe it's better in other languages. I'm not sure.
I
Uh,
don't know.
yeah, but it's not that big of a deal for me. You know, it's something that I can personally overlook. But before we continue on, I do want to check one of the chat. So let's kind of like see what
Cool.
people are saying with the chat, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into this, especially the actual ending sequence, because that's something I really want to talk
Mm,
about. But let's see what people
that
are saying
sounds
in the
great.
chat first. All right, so going back to early on here, Megaton Menace added me. I don't like that Zelda's sacrifice was undone. It could have been so much better to keep her a dragon. There are zero stakes because of the curse, and they had a chance to fix that. It doesn't matter who wins because either way, the loser just reincarnates. Um,
I mean,
I don't feel the same way about it, but I know that you're not alone in how you feel about this. Many people feel
mm,
that the end undoes her, kind of takes away from her sacrifice. I don't.
I don't think
Yeah.
it does though. I
Uh,
mean, she still spent tens of thousands of years as a dragon. She still suffered all like the emotional trauma, and I'm sure it was not
she says
like
she
a
doesn't
great
remember it
experience
though.
to transform.
She doesn't
She says
remember
she
it.
doesn't remember all of it.
You know,
She clearly remembers some of it.
it'll be interesting if there's a DLC or a third game where she has PTSD of being the Light Dragon. That would be cool, but also dark, and maybe too real.
I will say, if somebody got like tortured for X amount of years and then got like memory wiped, and somebody was like, oh, it doesn't matter what happened to you because your memory got wiped. I feel like that's not you still got you still went through it even if you don't remember it. It's like still happened.
Yeah.
I don't
Um,
know. I feel like it was crazy of Nintendo to do it in the first place, like at all. Like I thought that was absolutely wild. Like Zelda already got such a bad end of the stick, like in Breath of the Wild. She really just went
Everyone
through so
dies in
much
Breath of the Wild.
emotional trauma. Yeah, and she was just like everything was on her shoulders, but she kept not being able to do anything the entire time, just watching all of her friends die around her as she's supposed to be saving them but can't. And then when she finally is able to do something, all she can do is trap Ganon in the castle for 100 years, waiting for Link, who almost died, to resurrect. And then just like what this is something like 7 or 8 years after Breath of the Wild. I think some people have figured that out. X amount of years after Breath of the Wild, not that long. Now you have to go through all this. Like she's been through some serious shit.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Zelda, real bad. She
Yeah.
needs a break. She needs vacation.
I kind of feel similar to you, Brandon, because yeah, when you break it down, like everything that happens in Breath of the Wild, like that is extremely traumatic. Everyone dies pretty much, save for a handful of people from the initial events of the calamity. All of Zelda's family is dead. All of Link's family is dead. All of their friends from that time, except for Purah and Robbie, are dead. And Impa, Impa's little lady, but like almost everyone's dead. They had a lot of tragedy there. But then, even in the case of Tears of the Kingdom, there's tragedy, in the sense that, like, at least for Zelda, like, she comes to know all these people from the past, and she loses all of them.
Yeah,
So
they all die very
yeah,
quickly.
right, and like you could say, oh, Mineru lived a long amount of time, like she's fine. Well, no, they all it wasn't like a happy ending for. I mean, it was a happy ending at the end for them, but they had a
Yeah,
lot of suffering. Like Raru lost his queen. You know, they had a memory where he was grieving over her, staring at her grave. Like this is not the
yeah,
kind of stuff we see in other Zelda games. So it's there's a lot of sacrifice, there's a lot of loss. So for them to have this happy moment at the end, so there can at least be like a promising future where they can live happily ever after. I don't think that's unfair. Like there's been a lot of sacrifice.
yeah.
There's been a lot of sacrifice and suffering. Um, Now in terms of does it make sense that she was able to come back? I mean, I kind of expected it. I think most people expected her to be saved
Yeah,
in
I
some way.
thought she had to be.
Yeah,
There's no way they were gonna just leave her there
yeah.
forever as a dragon.
My theory on it is that the way she's brought back and the way it makes sense is that it's kind of like what was the beginning of the game is also the end of the game. So how did Zelda go into the past? Through some sort of weird form of recall. What is the
Right.
ability that Link uses throughout the entire game? It's also the pivotal piece of the promotional material. Recall. What does Zelda learn how to use in the past? Recall. Who's the person that kind of reminds her? This is my own. I have a theory on this, but like I feel like when Zelda lost her mother, Sonya took on a little bit of that maternal role, and
Mm.
Zelda learns how to use recall from her, and then she loses Sonya, who also had recall. So there's all of that, but then at the end, Link uses recall, and Raru and Sonya all three of them combine their powers to do a
Right.
massive recall, and that's how they're able to bring back Princess Zelda. They recall the
Right.
entire Eternal Dragon. And it makes
I
sense
agree.
because she's back to how she was beforehand. The tear is back. It's not like dissipated. It's still there. It's like literally the time was reversed, and
Right.
Link's hand is restored as well. And it has the gold particles,
Yeah.
just like whenever you use recall.
Yeah, I mean that's the impression I got while I was playing is that they did some kind of super recall
Super
and brought
recall.
her back. Because yeah, I mean she ate the tear, it was broke, digested,
Right.
turned her into a dragon.
Yeah.
Should not exist anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then Link's arm obviously going back to the way it was and all this other stuff. I think it seemed pretty clear that they were saying like, hey, we're doing recall here.
Yeah. And
I didn't even really have to break it down to just kind of like get that impression. I think they even show you that they're using the symbol that means recall, but
I tried to find it. I couldn't see it clearly because of the golden glow. But it was a golden glow on the green hand, which is whenever you use recall, there's a golden glow in the hand. So there's like a lot of
Yeah.
things that seem to suggest it. And something else about that scene, there was some foreshadowing of it because they show this moment when they're fighting back against the Molduga from the Gerudo, where Zelda and Sonya put their powers through Raru, and it shows that their powers can have a compounded effect. So that's what they did at the end. Sonya and Raru and Link put their powers together to enable super recall. So I feel like there was foreshadowing of it. The story of the game supports the idea. Now, some people have given pushback. Well, does it make sense for Sonya to be there? And I think of it like this: well, did it make sense for King Rome to be on the Great Plateau for 100 years?
I just think that it's Zelda. Like there's always been quote unquote plot holes every game for the whole series. I mean, if you break it down, you get real serious. Hyrule's like never in the same like layout or look. Ganondorf looks like a completely different person in most of the games, even though it's the same person. There's a ton of stuff that you could break down with the
Yeah.
whole Zelda series. I mean, most of the timelines just stitched together afterwards, after the games were like years and years after the games were made. So of course there's contradictions, and I don't think the Zelda team does what's best for what they want to tell, and they don't necessarily care about making sure it's like super watertight lore or
Right.
anything. They're just like
Yeah.
what's
I mean,
fun, what they
I
think
do
is
think they
interesting.
care a little bit, but like if you're gonna
Yeah,
think of like story elements from a Zelda game that came out 20 years ago, and be like, oh well, there's this one element that doesn't seem to fit. Like, I think some things you kind of have to gloss over. I mean, if you go to Hyrule's story, it does kind of talk about how like these are a telling of events, but as you know, but our understanding of the history of these events can change over time. So they are legends,
yeah,
right? It's the Legend of Zelda. So like each game is kind of a telling, and inherently, because it's kind of the telling of a legend, there is subject to interpretation and inaccuracies or a little bit more context added as more evidence presents itself in the future with a future game or what have you. So yeah, I mean,
right.
it basically, when you think of it in like that in that way, it almost allows for there to be retcons and plot holes to an extent. I still think it's fun trying to connect it all. But I mean, inevitably, some things are just not going to fully match. Like that, that's just the way it is. But it kind of
Yeah,
facilitates more debate, right? It keeps us talking about it, so it's kind of
right.
fun. But let's continue on with the chat here. Let's see. Anna Ghost. I would have liked some of the story to be happening in the sky. Well, I mean, the light dragon's in the sky.
Yeah,
Yeah. What's interesting is that there's a side quest, and I don't know when it unlocks. I think it might unlock after you beat the game for the first time. I'm not 100% on that because I didn't see it. I went to the. If you go to the top of the Temple of Time on the Great Sky Island, so the new Temple of Time, or the tower on the Great Sky Island, there is a construct there. You can do a little quest. It's actually a pretty fun little quest, so I definitely recommend going to the top there. If it's not there before you beat the game, it'll be there afterwards, and you do this fun little challenge, and then he tells you a little bit about how the Great Skylands were brought up into the air, and basically, it's nothing crazy, but it's basically the sages, the power of the sages. They use their powers to
right.
raise the the island into the sky to protect Link for when he would need to be resuscitated in the future. So like, because Zelda told them what was going to happen, everything was planned ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah, but and so there is some of that story there, but yeah, like there isn't any. There's no memory that shows the islands rising into the sky. It's kind of like something that happens off screen, but there is at least that side quest that explains how they got up into the sky. So I think that's kind of cool. And actually, this is just another little thing that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Brandon. But something that I noticed in the beginning of the game with the prologue, when Link and Zelda enter the room with Raru's hand and Ganondorf, the hand falls off and the tear goes towards Zelda. I don't think that was by accident. I think that was intentional, because then Zelda goes back in time to where Raru is. I think it's kind of like one of those I don't know how to verbalize it, but I think like it's called a close a time loop sort of thing, very much like how it happened in Skyward Sword, how the events of the past caused the events of the future, but the events of the future caused the events of the past. Like it's kind of like they're you're not sure which one happened first, but
Yeah,
they
I mean
both
it's time travel. It's
yeah,
tricky.
right. But it's kind of just that's just the way it is. But I think that was all part of the plan, and I you know that tear that Zelda has is Raru's tear, so and it's weird because the tears. It doesn't seem like the tears themselves. I call them tears. I know they're called secret stones. Some I saw some people were mad at me calling them tears. I understand that the tears of the dragon are the memories, but I feel that the secret stones were also designed to be about tears intentionally. But they're not technically called that. It's easier to call them tears than secret stones.
Yeah.
Um,
I just always thought of them as tears before the game came
Yeah.
out, so calling them Seer Stones is just weird to me.
so you have no problem. You personally have no problem with me calling them tears, then?
No, I mean,
Yeah. The
everybody
tear
called them that
stones,
before the game came out.
the tear shaped stones, right? Like,
Yeah.
they don't seem to have like their own. Like they have power, but it seems like their power is just meant to amplify whatever it is that you have.
Yeah,
So
they change depending on who has it.
right, because technically Ganondorf's secret stone was Sonya's.
Yep.
And they're like polar opposites. So
Yep.
Sonya's is like a nice, small, humble gold, and then when Ganondorf takes it, it grows and it becomes like this
Mm,
black thing. Like it's just it's very different. I want to kind of try and catch up with the chat here. Venetus. They also actually give you a way to experience the memories in order. It would have been nice if they made that clearer, though. Yeah, I mean, there is a way to do it. The game does offer it. But I think most people will not experience them in order because it's too much work. Like, yes, it can be done. I knew how to do it when I went through the memories. I just chose not to do it because it was too much of a. In the moment when I approached something, I was like, "Oh, I want to see this now." Right? I don't want to go back and forth. So that's just
right.
And it depends on how you choose to play the game, but I think it would have been a little bit better if the memories would have been told in order. But ultimately, I'm not sure I care that much because once I saw that final memory, it kind of just all fit together really nicely. Sky Sword Elisa. I finished on Friday, and I am so happy how it ended. It's now my favorite Zelda game was Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time prior. Interesting. I do want to get to my feelings in the actual that whole ending sequence in a moment, but I just want to kind of get through the chat here for a bit. Let's see here. Taker610 with a super chat earlier. I missed it. Let's see. Tears of the Kingdom played out much like Ocarina of Time. Agree or disagree? There's elements that reminded me of Ocarina of Time. This kind of gets me to the ending sequence. I think one of the things I loved about Ocarina of Time was just how epic they made it feel from beginning to end. And they did a good job of building up Ganondorf as the main villain and making him seem intimidating and building a bit of a rivalry there. And I think they did the same. That's also a big thing of what they did in Tears of the Kingdom. I really like how they built up Ganondorf because you have this epic prologue,
right?
And then you learn about where he came from with the memories. Now you could argue that there's not much. We don't know why he was such a mean, bad person.
I would say that's the only kind of thing. But I mean, not all the games really explain that. I would say Wind Waker is probably the best one, and it was just a couple of lines. Yeah. But he was kind of like talking about how he coveted the winds of Hyrule because they brought peace, and all the winds of Gerudo Desert only brought pain and suffering to his people. I thought that kind of stuff was really good. And this one, he just seems to be evil because he wants to be evil.
He's evil.
Which was slightly disappointing. I feel like that's the only disappointing thing I found about Ganondorf. Otherwise, I feel like this is one of the best, if not the best, Ganondorfs we've ever had.
I actually, yes, they didn't really explain, why he's evil, but also he is... No, he's not.
He's just evil. He's just
He's
screw this light stuff. I want darkness, bro.
Give me the darkness. He's straight up the Demon King. He is evil incarnate. And my personal speculation is that he is the initial reincarnation of Demise.
Yeah, I saw your video today.
Yeah, but I mean,
yesterday.
There's so many. Yeah, I mean, I put it out yesterday, but late yesterday. But there's so many ways to interpret that, right? So it's tough. But point is though, even if there isn't a lot of gray, right? He's just straight up evil, and I actually in some ways liked that he was just straight up evil. He was super evil. The whole prologue was super intimidating, seeing him in the past. But then once you beat the first 4 dungeons, that entire it's more than that, because he's also puppet he's Puppet Ganon, right? And Puppet Ganon takes on the form of Zelda throughout. So like there's like this evil Zelda throughout the story, and you're like, whoa, what's going on here? But it's
Yeah.
mostly subtle stuff until you go beat the first 4 dungeons, and then you go into the castle. And when you go into the castle, that entire exchange where like Zelda's like beckoning to you, like the voice acting there, it almost seemed like, my interpretation was that, well, first off, I assume that Link and Zelda are in some level of a romantic relationship. That's a whole other debate, right? I know some
Yeah.
people will agree, other people will disagree, but that's my perspective on it. I think it's intentional, but I also think it's left ambiguous because the game is meant to appeal to a lot of people. So if that's not how you choose to
Mm.
interpret it, that's totally valid. But for me, the way I interpret it is that yes, they are. So when Link is searching for Zelda, and Link and Zelda is calling out to him, it's almost like she was beckoning, like, come help me, I'm waiting for you, right? Like, that's not like, oh, this is not, it's not like, hey, it's my boss, I better go help him. It's a little bit more intimate than that to me. So it's creepy because it sounds like Zelda, but you know it's not, right? So there's like, it's like this weird duality there, and then when you
Mm.
finally fi- I mean, most people probably figure it's not actually Zelda by this point, but maybe you don't.
Yeah.
And when you finally get to the throne room, and then you have that final interaction with this puppet Zelda, you see who it is, you see the facial expressions, especially if you've seen the memories where Puppet Zelda was in the past as well, and you realize
Yeah.
that this is just an extension of Ganondorf, and then you see like Mummy Ganondorf there kind of high up in the room and having this intimidating monologue. It's building him up even more as a villain, and also building up this relationship. And what kind of makes it even more cool to me is that as you explore the game, and I started to run into the Gloom Hands more and more as I got deeper and deeper into the game, that's just how it worked out for me.
Yeah.
But the Gloom Hands, when you beat the Gloom Hands, it's Puppet Ganon.
It's
So
Phantom Ganon even.
That's what I meant. Phantom Ganon. Yes, thank you. Um, to me, they're like interchangeable. But the point is that is an extension of Ganondorf, right? Like the gloom is an extension of Ganondorf, and so it's almost like he's chasing you, like that. Those are
Yeah.
interactions with Ganondorf from like that's just what he's sending at you personally. So it's kind of like the game's way of having kind of like this interactivity with your rival without it kind of taking away from the open exploration. And then ultimately it all comes to the
Mm.
end with that huge epic sequence. So, and we'll get to that in a moment. I just want to kind of go through the chat because I realize it's already kind of like a long tangent. But I really liked how they built up this rivalry. And in some ways, you could argue it's better than what they did in Ocarina of Time. So in that way, it's similar, but there's also a lot of things that make it very different.
Yeah. I think they did a good job. I think the only thing I would have liked to see is I was hoping Ganondorf would like you'd see him power up or do like a kind of monologue after every dungeon. Like I was hoping to see something from him after beating every dungeon. Like just do it in order. Like
Like
play the first cutscene,
you wanted to see a
whichever.
reaction um per dungeon from Ganondorf.
Yeah, but he kind of just goes from mummy to full hydrated whenever you find him, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, you get to fight Mummy Ganondorf multiple times, right? Like with the Gloom Hands, and then that with the whole Puppet Zelda thing. And then
Yeah.
you are technically interacting with Ganondorf throughout the dungeon experience because you come to realize it's Puppet Zelda, right? So, like, there's some of
True,
that.
although it's just Zelda from afar. I like
Yeah,
the intrigue about Zelda. I think somebody like Girahim is a much better because Girahim kind of serves the exact same purpose as Puppet Zelda did, like introduce the bosses, like lead the character on
yeah,
constantly to the final fight. I think, but Girahim was like intimidating as hell, creepy. The dude told you that he would torture you until your ears bled from your own screams. Like that stuff was hardcore. And then Zelda's just kind of like, off in the distance. I think the final part where you actually meet like Puppet Zelda is really cool. But I wish they'd done. I'm not sure what they could have done more, but I just think the other games kind of did that same thing but better.
yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I really liked the dungeons. Um,
Oh, the
My
dungeons are great.
I some of them I liked more than others.
They're
I
short. They're short for sure. Uh, Even if you include the lead up, I think they only took me like, I mean, not too much less than classic Zelda dungeons, but including the lead up, maybe 30 to 45 minutes.
I mean, I think they're just vastly better than what we got in Breath of the Wild.
Oh, infinitely,
Yeah,
infinitely
like
better
the
than
the
Breath of the
fact
Wild.
that
I
they
wish they
all,
were more, and I wish they were longer. I wish there were more of them.
I would have been okay with more. Yeah, and I kind of wish the water dungeon was a little bit bigger. If
A lot
yeah,
of them have really cool concepts that they use like once or twice, and then that's like I feel like they could have really fleshed out a lot of the dungeon
yeah,
concepts more and made them longer.
yeah,
Especially, yeah, the water dungeon really was super short.
yeah. Like the lead up to the water dungeon was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
probably the best lead up for me
yeah,
personally.
yeah. And I didn't hate the boss. I mean, I have a bias because I want like every boss in a Zelda game to be like a giant thing, like super
Mm.
giant, and so every time the Zelda boss isn't a giant monster, I'm like slightly disappointed.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was kind of like goofy looking.
but if you as a shark, it's kind of like bigger.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah,
when I saw it in the trailer, I thought it was a regular enemy, not a boss.
or a mini boss.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like an overworld boss
yeah,
maybe. I did not think it was an actual boss.
right.
And
Like
all the other ones, I would have instantly like the we thought it was Ice Goma. It's not Ice Goma. It's called Colgera.
Colgera, but interestingly, there is Goma.
It is Goma.
Yeah,
Fire Goma.
it's marbled Goma. Yeah,
Horrible Goma even. Yeah.
yeah. Colgera is amazing, amazing.
Oh yeah. I
I
love how the boss fights in the dungeons, they still have, you know, like health bars and you can still damage them like in increments, but they feel like they have that kind of like classic three-phase or like two-phase dungeon, but where you like
yeah
need to hit it 3 times in order to beat the phase. Because a lot of the especially Colgera is set up to where you can really beat it like 3 hits. Essentially, you break the 3 circles, you move on to phase 2, you break them again, it's pretty much done. And it feels like a classic Zelda fight, but in Tears of the Kingdom's world. I think that's amazing.
I also love that you're able to refight all the bosses underground.
Yeah, stumbling across them underground is really fun.
Yeah, that part's really cool, and the reward's
You
fantastic.
get really
So
good, really good items for that.
yeah, yeah, and then the charges too, so you can build up your battery.
Yeah, you get 100 crystallized charges every time, which is nice.
Yeah, there's a lot that I think they really improved upon. Then there's other things that were kind of the same, but also Breath of the Wild is like a really good game, so it's
Yeah.
hard to complain. But I did say I want to get through the chat, so let me kind of come back here. AJW, some of the timeline discussion is silly. I really don't think the memories are retelling Ocarina of Time. I think they're either before or after Ocarina of Time. Hopefully before, because that's more interesting. I don't think they're retelling Ocarina of Time. I never got that impression.
I never got that impression.
Yeah.
No.
And I agree with you. It's either so. The video I made yesterday was coming from the perspective of trying to fit the events of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom into the timeline, right? So that was my attempt, and I feel like I did a good job. But of course, everyone's gonna have their own opinions and takes, right? And my perspective is that it doesn't eliminate any of the history, but it does require that you kind of think things from a certain perspective. And my take is basically that it takes place after Skyward Sword, and the memories are telling you of the retelling or of the forming of the kingdom, and that's the initial Ganondorf, and then he's just there for a really long time, and everything else that would happen happens. And that's just kind of how I fit it in. Then you have Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But there's another angle to consider where maybe the forming of this kingdom is a second forming of this kingdom. It's a new kingdom after all prior Zelda games. Now, the only problem with this theory, one, is that I think you gotta find evidence of it. And there's some things in the depths I've seen that might suggest it, but I'm kind of trying to confirm. But the other part of it is that if that's the case, if it's been that long that they're forming an entirely new kingdom, yet they have goddess statues, and in Breath of the Wild, the first memory there, they talk about the Skyward Hero, the Ocarina of Time Hero, and the Twilight Hero. not all history is lost. So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to think that the memories that like everything in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, including the memories, takes place all after every single event in Zelda. So I have a hard time believing that this is a new Kingdom of Hyrule that's being formed in the memories, like a second one.
Right.
But it's not impossible. It's just, it's one of those things.
Very hard to say at this point.
It's tricky how it fits together. Let's see here. I'm gonna focus on ads right now, just so I can catch up. Super Chris, people have the right to voice their opinions on how they feel about the ending. Everyone has their opinion. Just be nice or respectful.
Yeah.
Skyward's Elisa. Lo literally did that quest today, but you don't need to finish the game. My friend told me about it, and they haven't beaten it yet. Okay, so it's not at the what was weird is that I saw like a green glow above the Great Sky Island. Once I came back after beating the ending, that's when I discovered it. But I went back to the island multiple times throughout my adventure, and I never saw it. So I wonder if you have to beat a certain amount of dungeons before it's unlocked. So maybe it doesn't unlock after you beat the game, but it does unlock after you beat a certain amount of dungeons. And so
So it's on top of the Temple of Time?
The one on the Great Sky Island.
Yeah, because I went up there immediately after, like, beating the Great Sky Islands, and there wasn't anything up there.
Yeah, eventually there will be. I bet. I mean, now that you've been in the game, if you go back, I'm sure you'll find it there.
Yeah, I'm sure it's there now.
But so it might unlock after you beat like maybe the first 4 dungeons or something. That makes sense because it's. I'm not sure, but at some point when you beat some level of dungeons, I'm betting is when it opens up. Oh no, you know what? That makes sense. So Erika King Love says, I think it unlocks when you get the Zora armor. No, that makes sense because you need the Zora armor to do it because there's a whole bunch of new islands above this Great Sky Island that have waterfalls. You can't beat it without the Zora armor. You need it. So that's probably what it is. Which, by the way, is another one of those like non-linear elements or linear elements added to the game. You need a certain item in order to complete that quest. So that's definitely it. It's after you get the Zora armor. All right, moving through here. Skyward's Elisa. I was sad we didn't fight Puppet Zelda. Instead, we just got more Phantom Ganons. I wanted that ping pong battle. I heard that you can actually reflect the gloom back during the Ganondorf fight with the Master Sword. So there might be some ping pong.
The final battle.
Yeah, the final battle.
You can reflect those back. Yeah, you didn't know that. What did you do? Just get hit?
I dodged them, or I just took them like a champ.
Some of them you can't dodge. At least I didn't. See an easy way to do so.
I've actually fought the boss twice. I refought the boss recently. So the first time, I was not prepared. I did not bring enough gloom heals. I was gloomed down.
I only had 5.
I had none going to the final fight, and I basically I did almost the entire battle with 1 heart. It was live streamed, and I somehow beat it on my second try with 1 heart. Like I had some hearts, and once I take a hit or two, I'm down to 1 heart, and I'm down to 1 heart for like the entire fight. I think I just like used my shield to defend myself or dodge them.
Yeah, I went through all of my shields during that fight. I beat it first try, but if I did not have really good shields, like I had like 6 level 70 shields and then like some level 50s and 60s, and I went through all of them. They were all gone.
He breaks my Hylian shield every time I've done the fight. I lose my Hylian shield.
I have not even gotten a Hylian shield yet.
Yeah.
I haven't found one.
Yeah, it's in the game. I could tell you where. But
I'll find it eventually.
Yeah. So Samuel A here with the super chat. Thank you, buddy. Samuel A asks, Ganondorf can probably be counted out of next game, right? Since he dies here. Also, did you notice his second phase has the Ocarina of Time Ganondorf boss music? There's a lot of music that's referencing prior Zelda games. So I did notice some elements.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking specifically during the second phase, like, oh, this is the Ocarina of Time second phase music, but there were parts I was like, oh, that's Ganondorf music. Oh, there's that. The music is just amazing. Throughout the game,
Oh yeah.
there's so
It's
much.
great.
There's so much. But in terms of counting Ganondorf out of the next game, that's
Um,
tough because
I mean, it depends on where they even pick up on the next
Right,
game.
yeah.
I don't think they're gonna do like another sequel or something that's a direct like continuation of that timeline. I doubt. I think they'll go for something new. I mean, I don't know. Do you think that they'll use Breath of the Wild as kind of a new base to like build more lore off of and try to like keep that going? Because I kind of feel like they'll just do another new thing. At least that's what I'm hoping for. That's what they've always done.
yeah, I don't know if I want them to do another game in the world of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. Like I think they want to
Well, not even in the world, just like direct lore connection.
I just want them to move on to a new art style, new mechanics, and just wherever that takes them, just move on.
Yeah.
On the flip side, there is part of me that wants to see more of these characters because I've come to love them even more. Which is why I'm kind of banking on there being like an epic kind of DLC quest that's kind of extensive. So that arguably would kind of like a third game or like a 2.5 kind of thing. So it's tough. I can just kind of going back to the question of like, will Ganondorf return? I don't think you can ever count out Ganondorf forever. And to Brandon's point, depending on where it's placed in the timeline, like if it's beforehand, then he's still alive, right? It's also tricky because it depends on how you interpret this Ganondorf. If I think of it in my interpretation based off the video I made yesterday, right? Trying to fit Breath of the Wild into the Kingdom into the timeline. The way I have to see this Ganondorf is he's the first Ganondorf. He's the first Ganondorf to get a reincarnation. He's the first reincarnation of that spirit of hatred demise, and then he's sealed underground. And then all the events that transpire afterwards is where we see the Ocarina of Time Ganondorf and the Four Swords Adventures Ganondorf. So the implication of Link beating this Ganondorf, there can still be other male Gerudo.
Yeah. I would like it if they did something like a whole new boss though, because the Spirit of Demise doesn't necessarily have to be Ganondorf.
It doesn't have to be Ganondorf. Yeah.
Be something else.
Yeah. So actually, there's this interesting little detail that I discovered that actually supports my theory a little bit more so. So there's a memory in Tears of the Kingdom during the fealty when Ganondorf is swearing his fealty. There are two Gerudo women that are behind them, and apparently their clothes show text that are the names for. I'm trying to remember their names. I'm like looking them up now because I forgot what there was like Koemi and
Twin Rova.
The Twin Rova sisters. Kotake. Who are they? Is Kotake one of them?
Sounds
Koemi.
right.
Yeah, Koumi. I'm looking it up now. Koemi and Kotake. So the old witches in Ocarina of Time are young Gerudo women potentially in Tears of the Kingdom, or in the memories of Tears of the Kingdom, which would support my theory that the initial Ganondorf becomes the Demon King, but he's sealed away, and so Koemi and Kotake, who were the loyal supporters of that first evil Ganondorf,
Right.
they raise up a new male Gerudo, and he becomes the Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time, and then eventually the Wind Waker and also Twilight Princess. That I really like. Now you could also argue, oh, it could just be reincarnations of Kotake and Koemi. They could just be references. Yes, it's ultimately what you choose to make of it until Nintendo confirms
really
otherwise. But it does fit. So I kind of like I'm kind of riding more with my theory now that I realize that there's at least two Gerudo women that have the text that show them probably being some iteration of the twin Rova sisters, which yeah, so that's interesting. And if that's the case, if this is like the Ganondorf that his kind of spirit of hatred takes on different forms, like either it being Calamity Ganon or different Ganondorf incarnations, because actually, even in Four Swords Adventures, the hatred of Ganondorf is embodied in Dark Link. So it can, his spirit, the Ganondorf spirit, can go to different places and take on different forms. Regardless, though, even if this is the end of Ganondorf, it's not necessarily the end of Demise, to your point, Brandon. Like, they can always bring something back, and it's tough. It is tough. So let's talk about this end in more detail, Brandon. So we've
yes.
kind of brought it up, but I love the build up. You know, I talked about earlier how Ganondorf, like I think they built up this character, and he feels really intimidating. And we have these
really strong
series of epic duels, like everything. Like I think I loved everything about the ending sequence, like the whole thing, from beginning to end, going down there. It's tough to get.
It's a nice linear sequence.
Yeah, it is kind of like there's a point of no return too. Like, so you can't just like go back.
Yeah.
You could use recall to kind of get someone back, but not recall. Ascend. But yeah, there's a point where you can't save. There's no if you're an idiot like me and you go in unprepared. If you don't have if you don't get the teleport.
That medallion thing.
The travel medallion. Like, if you don't get that,
yes.
You're kind of like...
I do not have that.
Yeah. I didn't have it at first. I have it now. Yeah, but if you go in unprepared, it's going to be really, really tough. If you go unprepared, you'll probably be fine. But you got to really prepare yourself.
Oh, yeah. I love that first... that linear sequence up to the armies of Ganon, and I even said, I think a few weeks ago on one of the podcasts, that I thought that I had gotten to the final boss fight, and I did. That's what I found. I just stumbled upon that. It's really easy to like just get to on accident.
The end.
I mean, I imagine a lot of people were just like, "Oh, where's the easiest way to enter into the depths? Well, I'm already right here. The sword's already put me kind of like right here at the castle, so just jump down." And then that's the end of the game. I do think it's cool that they, because before the game came out, we were wondering if they were going to let you fight the boss at the beginning of the game. I feel like it's probably even harder to do that than in Breath of the Wild, although maybe not because of Fuse. Because the armies again have a lot of really good Fuse stuff. But that whole sequence up to the armies of Ganon is really cool. Did you challenge the Silver Lionel? Because I did not. I was just like, screw that guy.
Yeah, I did. I killed him.
Nah, I didn't even attempt. I was just like, I'm leaving.
I didn't realize he was silver. I was just like, oh, Lionel, I should fight it. Yeah. I actually already beat the 5 Lionels. Do you know where the 5 Lionels are?
No.
Have you found that part yet?
Is it in a Coliseum under the depths? Because I found a Coliseum in the depths where I had to fight Lionels and I died.
Yeah. It's not 5 Lionels at the same time. They're in a row, in succession.
Yeah. But if
it was 5 at a time, that would have been...
That would have been rough.
It would have been insane.
But no, I got through like 2 or 3, and then I ran out of Gloom heals because I only had like 2 on me.
Yeah. I just whacked him.
I left.
I think at that point I was pretty well prepared, so...
I only had like maybe 10, 11 hearts at the time. And like maybe like 30 or 40 level stuff.
Yeah. I've gotten decent at being able to dodge most of their attacks. Yeah.
I am not good at the dodging in this game. I feel like the timing is strange.
It feels
I was better
different.
at it in Breath of the Wild than I was in this game. It feels like they changed it.
Yeah, I
I'm
used
not
to
sure
be
if they
able
did or
to
not.
stun the Lynels with my bow. You still can, but there's something about the timing of when they're moving that seems different.
Headshots in this game are really hard to pull off, I feel, for some reason. Like, I swear I'm hitting them in the face, and it's just like, no, you didn't. And like, yes, I did, though. I saw it.
Are you talking about just the Lynels or like in general?
Just in general.
Hmm. I haven't
I feel like a lot of times I hit them in the head, and it just did not count.
I haven't experienced it that much.
I
I've
hit
been
them a
okay with
couple in
it.
the chin, and it would just be like, that does not count as the face.
Yeah.
I'm like,
But let's reel it back because I did want to talk about
yeah.
like it's all super cool. Like I was floored when did you notice the torch?
I noticed that it was on the ground, but I didn't have an inventory, so I had to pick it up, so I just left it there.
Sure, but you realize what that torch is.
I assume it's Zelda's torch.
Exactly, which is kind of that's it. There's nothing. It's not deeper than that. It's just
Okay.
yeah. But the torch that you had in the beginning of the game, it's kind of like a nice little.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool when the champions finally come in to fight back, and they instead and which
yeah.
is kind of like a nice contrast over Breath of the Wild is that then you actually leave the sages to fight the bosses. In
Right.
Breath of the Wild, you leave the champions to fight the bosses. The implication is that they die. No, these sages can handle it. Granted, they're sages now, right?
Yeah.
They're powered up thanks to the secret stones. So
Right.
that was kind of a little bit of a nice change of pace there. But what I also liked is that in Breath of the Wild, like if you do all the dungeons, they water down the boss. Like they have the life bar. They don't do that.
Right.
In Tears of the Kingdom, they just
No.
it is still easier because you don't have to fight all the bosses, right? Because you have the sages to fight them for you. But Ganondorf is still full power. You still fight full power Ganondorf, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
And yeah, that entire sequence, it was a cool. You get that that monologue. Like he's so greatly voiced. Yeah, so greatly voiced. He's a perfect villain. It's epic. Each sequence is epic, but the last part is where it just like everything was great, but the last part was masterpiece. It was GOAT status to me. Like when he's like I've had it, and he rips off the tear, and then he swallows it, and I'm like, yes.
He did such a great monologue before. He's like, I'm willing to sacrifice everything to beat you. He was like, my soul, my very being, or something like that, something epic like that. And I was like, oh crap, he's gonna do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all perfectly set up. He always has the option to do it. Like, and it didn't occur to me that he was gonna do it though.
No, it didn't occur to me either. And then then they also got Zelda in there for the final fight too, and I was like, "Oh, let's go!"
When she fights alongside of you, and the symbol of, especially if you're on Team Link Zelda, right? When you think of her as like your partner, she's supporting you, right? Like she's your foundation. She's there to catch you if you fall. Which to me, I was like, oh my god,
wow.
right? Like, but you see,
it's just like an early 2000s like emo song. Wow.
I know, but like, there's symbolism there, right? You can argue
it's
that.
Great. I love it.
And it was cooler because the battle takes place in the overworld in the sky.
Yeah.
But you're really high up, especially for the final attack. You go really high up, like the stars show. It gets really red. And I during the live stream I did when I did the first fight, I was like, we're in space almost.
The moon.
It's
to the moon.
It's not to the moon, but the moon is like there, and like it's really high up in the sky, right? So it's kind of like with that sort of line of thinking was close. But like the fight, it was easy, right? It wasn't like super hard, but it felt fair. It felt reasonable. I think it was
fun. It was interesting
fun.
to do.
It was interesting to do. It was so much better than the beast than the giant pig that just stood there.
Yeah, which didn't even look that cool, to be honest.
No, it didn't. It really didn't.
And it wasn't fun to go around because it was like very annoying to shoot all the points because they're kind of like high up in weird spots. So you kind of gotta move your horse under there and like shoot and hope you're like It's like always at the edge of your bow range too, which is annoying.
Yeah.
This just wasn't fun to do or
No,
interesting.
but the final fight in Tears of the Kingdom is extremely fun. Like it's a unique
Oh yeah.
experience. You're riding Princess Zelda, the Light Dragon, all over the skies of Hyrule, fighting an even bigger demon dragon. Like then
Oh, he's huge.
and
Just
he's
absolutely massive.
and just like when you kind of think of like the power scaling here, like when you just think of like the significance of how powerful Ganondorf is, and then he becomes an eternal dragon, just like the stakes, right? Like just how powerful it feels that he is, like the threat level. It's super cool, right? It's a huge monster. Like I think it's the hugest boss we've ever seen in a Zelda game. So to me, that made it feel extra epic, and the music is just super thrilling. I think it's the best. It's the best phase in a Zelda game ever for a fight. Like it was just
Really?
so exciting. But that wasn't even the end. That wasn't the last bit of gameplay. Like it's cool when it says like mission complete, like
Yeah.
defeat Ganon. But then you're like, wait, there's still one more.
Still playing. Hold on.
Still find Princess Zelda, right? So when we see that whole sequence of when they use a super recall, and then Link is falling from really high up, and then for whatever reason, I don't know if you felt the same way, Brandon, but like when that final sequence when Link is falling through the clouds, I felt like the graphics were even better. Like the world just seemed even more realistic. I don't know why, but it just did.
Don't know.
Maybe it's the time of day and the lighting in the clouds. Like they just kind of looked like more real to me for whatever reason. But it was just a really cool moment, and then being able to dive to save her, like that's not something we ever saw in a Zelda game. It was just like a really cool, awesome end to the gameplay. Like all of that together, like just the entire lead up, like going down through all the gloom under, like it's not even the depths, it's even deeper than the depths, right where you're going. And
super deep. Yeah.
And if you look carefully, you can see the different ruins from the initial teaser trailer. It's just hard because of all the gloom. And by the way, I mentioned it the other day, but I was wrong. You know the buffalo in the teaser trailer
Yes.
is in the game. They are in the game.
Really?
Yeah. Go to the Faron region. Find the stable there. Cross the river. There's a few of them. They're called Dondons. It's a newly discovered species by Princess Zelda. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. But like anyways, like so like you can explore these ruins right from the beginning of the game. You can break the boulders and see like the rest of the murals. You get there, all the interactions with the hordes of enemies, and the sages come in, and the different bosses, and that whole model of Ganondorf, and the repeated duels, then that final dragon fight, all the story cutscenes, finally saving her, seeing that final scene with Mineru, like all of it together, like that sequence. I have a hard time thinking of any other ending sequence that is as good in any Zelda game. And my favorite ending sequence is Ocarina of Time. Like, Ocarina of Time's ending sequence, I think, is superb.
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdoms might be better.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely epic. I think the other thing that made the final phase better than the final phase of Breath of the Wild is you don't have just one phase for Ganondorf, like the fight. You can get three separate phases essentially. And I think that's just super epic. I thought the fact that they did like an actual duel, because I thought in Twilight Princess it was awesome that that one of the phases was like a duel, but it was very easy and like short. But this is like super epic because you kind of get a hint of it playing through the game with the Phantom Ganons of what like the end of the game is gonna be.
Yeah.
But then they just crank it up to 11, and then they introduce like whole new gameplay things that don't exist in the rest of the game, like Ganondorf being able to take away your max health and you can't like bring it back up, like you're just screwed. I thought that was insane.
Him being able to dodge the way you can dodge.
Oh yeah, him actually during dodges was crazy. The fact that they kind of force you to fight him in a specific way is also very interesting. Also, the fact that you can use the Master Sword the whole time and it never deteriorates was great. Because I
Yeah.
love weapon durability for when I'm exploring the open world, but it would not have made sense to use my, you know,
Yeah.
random podunk weapon that I made. That's when, Gandalf's supposed to only. We this entire time Zelda sacrificed all this stuff so that we can use the Master Sword, and if we didn't get to use that the whole time, it would have been really lame.
No,
But the
yeah.
fact that they let you use it the whole time is amazing. Yeah, I mean, I thought I'm not as big on the final phase as you are. I thought it was really cool, uh, but I didn't think it was like the absolute greatest thing ever. You seem to have been like really, really blown away by it. I thought
Yeah.
it was pretty epic. I think the fact that
I have a bias
like
towards dragons and flying in the sky
mm,
and being close to space.
true. I thought the character implications for what Ganondorf did, like him sacrificing everything to try to defeat you, was really awesome. Uh, but no, I think it was a really cool set piece. It could have been, faster, more gameplay focused, but I don't think it needed to. You had the first three fights that were really good.
Yeah.
Uh,
I loved it. It whatever that you could argue was almost like a victory lap, but it was done right.
yeah.
Yeah, it was done right because it was new, interesting gameplay. It was exciting, and there was still some level of a threat. It's not like
Yeah.
super easy. It's just easy.
I mean, the other parts were already really hard, so if they had like another final part that was like insanely difficult, it will probably would. A lot of people probably wouldn't be able to beat it. Like this isn't Dark Souls. It's not supposed to be like crazy difficult, and the final fight's already like those first three phases are really
If you
challenging,
don't
especially that
prepare
last.
yourself, and you don't recover. Like if you don't eat anything, that the entire exchange against Ganondorf
Yeah.
is tough because if you take
Plus
damage, the
that
gloom it really holds you back.
that third kind of part of the duel phase where he actually like launches the is almost Dead Man Volley style projectiles at you where you can hit them back.
Yeah,
But those are the ones that just take away your max health, just period, just breaks the hearts. That is brutal. That's absolutely brutal. Like, oh my gosh. I came in with 20 hearts. I think I ended the fight with like six.
you had some.
6 max hearts or something.
You
Like
had
I was
some.
getting whooped. I kept accidentally getting hit by them, even though I was like swinging my sword. Man, I thought that was just brutal, but in a great way.
So Sky Swords, at least in the chat, said this part. Zelda says, "Link, I'm finally home." Like, how did you feel about like that moment when
Mm.
she says that? To me, I thought
Oh,
it was
it
stirring.
was.
It was great.
Oh yeah, it gave me butterflies for sure. Like, you know, chills maybe is the right word. No, I thought all the stuff with Zelda because I really did feel for her the entire time. I was just like, man, she's been through so much. Like, she really is a pivotal part to the story, which isn't always true of the other Zelda games. Sometimes she's just more of a damsel in distress, almost.
Yeah,
Whereas this one is like, you could not have defeated Ganondorf
without her.
without the sacrifice that Zelda went through.
And what something that's cool about the final segment is that you technically fight Ganondorf with Zelda.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, she gets to fight alongside you.
Like Zelda arguably plays an equal role in defeating Ganondorf, which is very interesting. You could argue she plays even more of a role than Link, depending on how you look at it. If you consider all the events she did in the past and all the setup and all that. But let's say they both play a pretty vital role, and it makes her pretty significant. Shout outs to Metroid Prime. Dragons are the coolest mythical creatures ever, so I'm right there with you, Andres. Thank you, Mr. Metroid Prime. Thank you, appreciate that. Um, or, yeah, yeah. Sky Lisa added me. I was just crying the whole time. It made me so happy. She was smiling so big. Zelda Link is definitely a thing in Tears of the Kingdom. And actually, it brings me to something I want to bring up. I think that if you're on the whole Zelda train, like if you believe that there's some sort of romance between them, it makes the ending for Tears of the Kingdom, it makes the entire narrative for Tears of the Kingdom a lot more significant. If you think that it's just like Night, like if it's purely business or just kind of like friends, nothing more. I mean, again, I think part of what it is about Zelda games, especially Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, it's kind of what you make of it. So if that's what you want to make of it, that's fine. But I do think that if you do buy into the relationship aspect to it, it makes the story a lot more significant. Like like one, when you think about Zelda making that sacrifice, there's a sadness to it because, oh, what about Link, right? Like, and then so there's that element, but then Link chasing around this ghost, there's that, right? Like, if this is the woman he loves, like, what's going on with that, right? And then at the end, when he finally saves her and she says, "I'm home," it's more than just, "Oh, it's good to be back." It's like, "I'm home with you." Like, they are, like, Link is her home.
Nice.
So all of that's really cool. And there's go on.
Well, I was kind of gonna tangent a little bit, but it's very related.
I was going to as well, so go ahead.
But one of my biggest issues with this game is that Link is surprisingly non-expressive. Despite everything that's going on, he pretty much has two moods: completely unfazed and slightly irritated. Also, maybe slightly happy, and that's about it. I really wish they were just more on the nose with them being a couple. I think one of the biggest parts of Skyward Sword was the fact that they were more forward with them being a couple, and it really lent the story being really good. I mean, in Skyward Sword, spoilers for Skyward Sword, I guess, but there's a similar moment where Zelda kind of sacrifices her time, I guess.
And Link
she
is
goes
upset.
into like a crystal, and Link's like very upset, but like he's clearly like
distraught.
You know, very distraught. You can see in his face he's like banging on the shield. I don't know what you call it. What's holding him from being with Zelda? He's been chasing her the entire time, and he can't get to her. But you can see it in Link, and in this game, it's just like Link does not care about anything that is going on. He is too stoic, in my opinion. He's just kind of like has no emotion.
In Breath of the Wild, there are some memories where he shows more emotion. I'll have to look back at all the cutscenes and kind of like analyze it more. But I do understand where you're coming from. I do feel that the facial expressions of Link, because I know they have they have the technology. They just chose not to do it. Like this isn't we can't make good facial expressions with our no. The
other characters are good.
Actually, Princess Zelda's facial expressions are insanely good. They're really good. There's a lot of subtlety with them. It's superb. But I understand where you're coming from with that for sure. And you could maybe make the argument, but it all comes back down to how they want Link to feel like an avatar, a blank slate. But this Link, in terms of background and story, has more characterization than any prior Link. Also,
you can't name him. He is Link.
Exactly. You can't name him. Like that's a whole other element. So it's strange. It's almost kind of like they're going in two separate directions here. Something that Dizzy Eyes brings up in the chat that I think is worth noting. Dizzy Eyes says, if you notice, Zelda Stone's symbol is added to the load screen after you beat the game, since she helped you fight Ganondorf, all 6 sages together.
I did not notice that.
I did notice that there was a 6th sage rune or symbol on the load screen after you beat the game. Yeah, there are some. Yeah, like there's a few little nice touches that's there after you beat the game. I don't think it means anything in terms of gameplay, but it's a nice acknowledgement that you have it. Then there's also the star. The star for all the loading files.
Of course.
Yeah. Samuel A. If Twilight Princess and Wind Waker come after Switch 2 releases, do you think they'll get 4K upscaled, similar to like Resident Evil Next Gen upgrade? Um, I'm not sure
Yeah,
what you're
so
referring to in terms of the Resident Evil Next Gen upgrade, but yes, I think they're gonna
yeah,
be
I'm not
4K.
sure what he means by that
I,
either.
I,
But
I do. I mean, I've been on the 4K train for a while, and not only am I on the 4K train, I'm on the 4K 60 train. Skyward Sword HD was brought to 60. Considering that Wind Waker and
I
Twilight,
would really hope, yeah.
I think they're going to be 4K 60. I mean, we're not talking about remakes here. We're talking about ports. So
Right. I think it's completely plausible for them to do it. I feel like they're not going to do it because I feel like the only reason they did it for Skyward Sword is to make the motion controls feel better, and that since they don't need to do that for the other ones, they're not going to. But I would really hope to be wrong because,
a
we've
link.
seen some great remasters from Nintendo as of late, some better ones. And they're putting some more effort into some of them, so I would hope.
Link's
The Zelda ones have
Awakening remake
historically
is
been
60
kind of
frames per
released,
second
so.
as well, though.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, and I could be
It was a
mistaken,
remake though. They didn't. They kind of coded the whole game to be that way.
sure, but my point, Skyward Sword HD, 60 frames per second, Link's Awakening remake, 60 frames per second. I'm just saying. I think a Link.
You would hope. One would hope.
I'm just saying there's an argument to be made, right? It's not guaranteed to your point, but I
Be a
have.
good seller.
It,
Good selling point.
it's just the games have been out for a long time already, so like if you're not gonna add any new content, at least enhance them as much as you can without really changing anything. So,
Yeah.
60 FPS would go a long ways. The Devastator 619, as they say, home is where the heart is. There you go. Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. Metroid Prime added me. By the way, nice choice of music for the stream. As soon as I arrived at the Dragon Island, I just stood there for a bit to admire the music and how atmospheric it is. It's one of my favorite themes in the game. It's so good. It's extremely good. I wish it was
The music.
more.
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say I wish there was more map to explore that had the theme.
I was gonna say is the once you beat the 4 dungeons and then you have to go to Hyrule Castle to quote unquote find Zelda. The theme that plays in the floating castle section is absolutely incredible. Like that just slaps so hard. It's like the energy is at like an 11 out of 10 for some reason when you're exploring that part. It's really good.
Yeah. I really like how overall the game just has a lot of moments, a lot of areas that have like their own theme, like the Mifa theme. There's like Mifa's Fountain in Zara's Domain. Love that theme as well. It's great. Yeah, I mean, Tears of the Kingdom I think is a fantastic game. Where it ranks amongst all other Zeldas, that is a conversation we'll be considering and having for years to come. I realize I've been the one kind of praising Tears of the Kingdom more. Maybe I just like the game more than you. But
Probably.
It isn't to say I think it's perfect, right? I mentioned I think we all agree that they probably could have done a better job of retelling the Imprisoning War, just by not doing that, or like in this case maybe less would have been more. Had they just given it the powers and said, "Hey, we've been waiting for you. Here we go." Like it could have been something as simple as that, and I think it might have been better. Now, what would have been best is if they just either told like another interesting angle of the story from that perspective that we had not heard before, or something. But like just retelling the same events again was just kind of.
I just skipped it.
Yeah, a lot of people skipped it after.
I wish we had learned about the ancient sages because they're very much nobody's. I mean, I think they gave them those masks for a reason because they didn't really want to design like personalities for them or anything. They're just kind of characters to exist.
I mean, there is. I think if you go to Boundary Break, Boundary Break, the YouTube channel. I think they discovered that there is technically faces behind the masks. So now the faces might not be anything that's like super unique, right? Like they may not be They may look like basic Goron Zoras or something, but there is, you know, there is a
There's
face.
something there.
There is something there. Yeah.
But they clearly didn't feel the need to show it, and they don't really tell anything about themselves particularly other than they're good people. They're gonna help.
Well, what's interesting about them is that their masks are of the divine beasts, and the divine beasts are not in the game. So it's very interesting. It could just be a reference, but it also might be material that they may expand upon in DLC.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough call. Yeah, but anyways, going beyond just, I wish that them having handled the Sage story moments a little bit more, a little bit better. I mean, I love the game. But, and maybe it's just, part of it's just me feeling almost rushed to kind of play through it to make content. Now I'm slowing down, taking my time with it a little bit more. Honestly, I've had such great experience with it. I don't think it was marred. I think I handled it relatively well. But, I almost wonder, you know, like, I'm almost excited to see what the Zelda team could do if they were to create a game like this, but with more powerful hardware, with a new world. But this level of content, like in terms of, like, just because there's a lot of side quests, there's a lot more interesting characters this time around. The world has a depth to it unlike any other, right? Like with the caves and then the underground, and obviously the surface is already there, then all the skies, like that's layers of
so many
depth,
layers,
which I really appreciate. But you know, a lot of it I kind of seen before, right? A lot of the caves look very similar. A lot of the depths look very similar. It would be interesting to see a Zelda world, even if it's a little bit smaller, but it has that level of depth, but more variety, and a more powerful hardware, and just kind of something totally new. Like, I realize we're talking about a Zelda game that may be 5 to 7 years from now, but I think if they kind of build upon what they have accomplished here in the Kingdom and have that be the standard, I think the next Zelda game, kind of, if they follow that it has an incredible chance to be considered an even better game than Tears of the Kingdom. And Tears of the Kingdom's and Tears of the Kingdom's great. Like, I think, like, as I said before, Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time, and Tears of the Kingdom, by almost every objective metric, is better. So, do I consider Tears of the Kingdom a better game than Breath of the Wild? I'm not sure, because...
Strange. I think objectively, Tears of the Kingdom is a better game than Breath of the Wild, but I'll say I probably enjoyed Breath of the Wild more. I think that no matter what, I wasn't going to enjoy this game as much as Breath of the Wild, but just because it's a sequel set in the same world. And you were pointing out earlier, like, the caves and the depths, they are great. They're amazing. I love them. But they do feel like they look very similar, and they're not really like, they're not a substitute for like a whole new open surface. I feel like the depths are the depths almost feels like a giant, like, dungeon almost that you can explore anywhere. It's like almost a giant open world dungeon, it feels. Which is very, very cool, but it doesn't really replace, like, there's no cities, or there's some, like, camps and stuff for, like, Giga camps and things, and there's a broken down civilization from, like, old mines and things, but, you know, you don't have your Kakariko villages, or your Hirtano villages, or Gerudo towns, or any kind of things like that. You don't have your, like, key locations. It's just kind of, like, cool stuff down there. I really do feel like do you agree that the map, or I guess, do you think that the map is, like, the surface map is different enough? Because I don't think it's actually honestly different enough. I barely felt the need to explore it, or the want to explore it, past just getting all of the towers and seeing the shrines that I have gotten, and exploring the main locations. Like, most of the time I'm exploring the surface, I'm just annoyed how long it's taking me to get to my location, because it's all stuff I've seen before, pretty much.
I don't know. I don't entirely disagree with you, but I'm not sure I entirely. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that was something I have noticed, and maybe that's what I was trying to get to earlier. Is that while I've enjoyed my game and I've taking my time with it, maybe it is because I recognize most of the world that like part of me doesn't feel like taking my time strolling through every nook and cranny of the surface, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of speeding through it, and maybe that's the difference that I'm noticing, is that
I
I'm
kept having
kind
to
of
tell myself to like slow down and just
yeah.
like walk around because I kept just wanting to. One of the things I loved about Breath of the Wild is that you could climb anywhere, do and go anywhere. But the thing about Tears of the Kingdom is it felt like giving me the ability to climb anywhere almost made me explore less because I could essentially just chart a straight line
Right.
path directly to where I need to go and completely ignore everything else.
Yeah. Sometimes I almost feel bad because I do that in the depths. I summon my air bike, slap a light
Mm.
bloom light on, and I can zip from point A to B. And I almost like have to remember. Wait, maybe I should like fly a little bit lower so I can make sure I
Yeah,
don't
in the
miss
depths
anything.
is actually where I spend most of my time like exploring because it is dark, and I don't just build a vehicle to get around most of the time. I could build a vehicle that doesn't deteriorate as quickly as the ones I usually use, but I also honestly like exploring on Minoru's construct a lot now that I have that.
That's
But
cool.
before, I would just run around on foot and use light seats. It was actually very slow. But it's fun to do that. I feel for the depths
Yeah.
because it's like a whole new map, but it's
I,
also
I
very very slow to do.
I think as more time goes on, I will start to explore things a little bit more slowly, and I'll get more and more detail as I like try and like make sure I do every single side quest, do every single shrine,
Yeah.
and I'll discover more and more. I know there's some cool armor sets in the game that have some interesting implications.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
That is one thing about the game that hugely disappointed me. Why are we getting the same armor sets again? And not just like a few, but like a ton. Like
like
I feel
all like
like most of the armor sets almost
but
are
but
from Breath of the Wild.
but a lot of them are the amiibo and DLC stuff as well that's in there.
That's
So
fair.
yeah. But there's also
But I mean,
there is a lot
like
of
I
new stuff too.
understand that,
You
but it
just have to.
doesn't help the fact that me personally is not interesting to me because I've already gotten it. Like I played the DLC, so I saw that content in Breath of the Wild.
It is
So like
repurposed, I guess. I sort of
I wish they
yeah.
had at least redesigned all of the. If you're gonna use the same armor, at least complete. They did redesign some of them, but they should have redesigned every set. Honestly, so that's kind of like what I'm talking about, where I feel like they didn't focus on the parts of the game that I personally would have liked to see.
Hmm.
Um, like they didn't focus on. Another thing is like enemy variety is better than Breath of the Wild, but not a ton better. There's like a few more enemy types, but that's about it.
There's
I think the
only
biggest disappointment for me in the game was when I heard that Lurelin Village was attacked by pirates, and I went to Lurelin Village, and it was just bokoblins and Lizalfos. They weren't even dressed up like pirates. I like the pirate ship. The pirate ship was cool,
there's
but
other pirate
like,
ships on the sea, I'll just tell you that. That's not
yeah, I've seen a couple more.
there's several. Um they're like yeah, there's a lot more, but I understand your point. Like I kind of wanted them to not be bokoblins. I wanted them to be like I don't know, like Gerudo pirates or like a whole other
Yeah,
race of pirate people. Like I was kind of hoping for something like that. Um a little bit more of a diverse kind of like storyline there.
yeah. I
Uh,
would have liked to have more unique enemies for different biomes because a lot of what they do is just like elemental variants, which is cool, I guess, but it's not interesting. I mean, it's perfectly fine enough from a gameplay perspective, I guess. Although unique enemies could also have like unique move sets and things, but I feel like even just from like a atmospheric and just like a it's not all about gameplay for me in a type of game like this. It's strange because I feel like a game like Zelda almost leans more on like the visual side for me personally, because when I'm exploring a world, a lot of the reward for me is finding cool looking things, like cool armor sets, cool looking weapons, which they did deliver on, I feel, pretty well
The
with the cool
weapons are
looking
sick.
weapons.
Yeah,
I will
yeah,
say, yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty dope. The
There's
fuse
so many
ability
cool
is
fusions.
by far my favorite thing that they added. I think that is amazing. Fuse completely changes up the game in a way that's all positive, no negatives. I feel like other abilities I'm not as into, like Ultra Hand, I like it for like building puzzle things, like something to get me across somewhere. But I'm not the kind of person who's at all interested in spending like 30 minutes trying to build like battle drones and things. I like Mineru's construct because it's very easy. You can just summon it, attach weapons. It doesn't deteriorate. You just use battery, keep using it. I think that's really fun to use, but I don't actually find it fun to just experiment with what I can build. I find it very janky and annoying, and it pisses me off. I feel like it would have been better if I could have gone to like a mode where like I zoomed the camera out and I could just move everything around like how exactly how I wanted it to and just like leave something floating in space and like just like a real editor kind of build. I think that would have been fun, but the fact that I just have to like kind of jankily move physically related objects around, try to combine them, that's annoying. It's almost like when the physics start getting in the way of my enjoyment instead of most of the time where they're adding to my enjoyment. It's also kind of the thing of where I'm no longer consuming content that's like created. It's then on to me to like create my own type of fun with like a tool set which they give, which for that type of game I think it does very well. It's just personally I don't enjoy games like that. Like I don't play like Minecraft or any of those type of like there's another game that I forget, but it's like a game where you like build cars with like blocks and different things and like it's a vehicle builder game. Those kind of games like they added that into to
Brandon, I'm just gonna tell you
to
right
Tears of the
now,
Kingdom and I don't care.
your negativity is summoning the blood moon.
Oh God, it is. Yo God, Ganondorf, I might be on your side. Oh no, what have
Yeah,
I done? Am I a traitor, guys?
you're totally a traitor. That's alright. I can skip.
But I think you probably enjoy things like Ultra Hand and just messing around with
I
things a
do.
lot more than I do.
I do a lot. Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom is definitely kind of like a my kind of game. Because I mean, like, I guess I'm just like a really creative person, right? I enjoy messing around, experimenting, trying out different things. But at the same time, I also appreciate when there's a lot more catered, crafted ideas as well, right? And I think
Yeah.
when you have a very when you have a system-based game like Tears of the Kingdom, sometimes you kind of lose a little bit of that because they want they want everything to kind of work together.
Hmm.
So for example, we can't pet dogs, right? That's like an independent individual animation
Ah.
thing. And like it would have been nice to be able to pet the dogs. You can't.
Yeah.
Now there are interesting interactions you can do with the dogs, but you can't pet the dogs, which would be kind of like the most basic thing you'd think you could do, and you usually
Right.
can do in other games. But there's a lot of other things
It
you can
even
do with
came up
dogs.
in a interview once, I believe.
Correct, and yet for the sequel they still didn't add it in. I think there's just certain design philosophies they just kept with, and that's just how it is. J.R.R. Tolkien in the chat seems to like your opinion, Brandon. J.R.R. Tolkien says, "Holy cow, Brandon out here speaking for the people. It's a fun game, I can't deny that, but I am remarkably disappointed. The game feels way too familiar and tedious." I don't
Mhm.
I don't personally feel that way about Tears of the Kingdom. I think it's incredible. But I mean, I also see some truth in that. I think that I think there would be something. There could be something. There's something even more special that could happen if they were to make another Zelda game, kind of like I think there's an even better Zelda game that can be made. Is what I'm trying to say. Like Tears of the Kingdom is incredible. It improves upon Breath of the Wild in so many ways. Breath of the Wild is already like one of the greatest games ever made, and so is Tears of the Kingdom. But if you're looking for more new stuff, Tears of the Kingdom is, building off of Breath of the Wild, so it's not going to feel totally new. So in that respect, I see where you're coming from in terms of maybe feeling similar, because it is similar, it is familiar, right? That is part of the point. So
Yeah.
the next Zelda game, inevitably or hopefully, will not feel that similar, but will still have that depth, but also be moving in more of the direction of having, some of those linear narrative moments that are mixed into the open exploration, and then also bringing in some of those cool tropes from prior Zelda games that we appreciate, like unique style of dungeons and boss fights, which they did. They did a great job of that. So I think they did a lot of great things in terms of bringing some prior traditional Zelda tropes and mixing into the open air experience and making it feel more involved. But I still think that there is another level they can go to. And this is in no way me saying that Tears of the Kingdom is in any way lesser than any other game out there. I think Tears of the Kingdom is pretty much a guaranteed game of the year. But
Probably.
But that doesn't mean there isn't room for growth. There is always room for growth. So yeah, I think Tears of the Kingdom is amazing, but there's things they can improve upon. So when people come at with me with critiques or criticisms, I don't straight up disagree. I may not feel as strongly about them, right? Like I don't care that much about all the NPCs recognizing all the story progression. Like that doesn't bother me that much, but I understand how that can take away from your immersion. I get it.
Right.
Like that.
You know what the
sense.
NPCs do better than Breath of the Wild, though, is that they at least recognize that not everything's okay. Like, and they kind of help you out too. Like, when you go to Hitano Village, doing that whole side quest is very good because you get first off you get what's the first reward? I forget. Oh, cheese. That's what it is.
Love
The
cheese.
Hitano cheese, which is very good. But then you can also get like the Hitano pumpkins, which give you like gloom resistance and stuff,
Love it.
which is very nice and helpful. But there's like storylines and quests that affect the towns, and which is very fun. I like that.
Yeah.
But also like people generally understand that there's like things are happening. They're not just like completely oblivious to it.
Yeah, and I
Which is
think
very
there's,
nice.
and I'm still working through the Akala and Lurelin stuff, but it's kind of cool that there are towns. I think there is a series of quests you can do in each town, so I think this, in terms of side quests, there's a lot more to do in Tears of the Kingdom. I think,
Yeah, the side quests are a lot more interesting.
yeah. So it's also one of the things where I haven't played through all the content in Tears of the Kingdom yet, right? I've done the main story and everything, but I think the more I play the game, the more acquainted I become with the world, the more I will grow to appreciate it. I mean, in terms of the main experience, though, I think they did some things that are just like the prologue. Is there any prologue? Like it's such an epic prologue. I think the Great Sky Island is great. I think the mechanics are great.
Yeah.
The boss fights are amazing. The ending sequence is glorious. As Venetus brings up, Venetus was just talking about, I think, the overall game, but yeah, it's just fantastic. Like I love this game, and I'm gonna be playing it for years to come.
Yeah, man. I feel like I still need to continue playing the game. I haven't played it much after I beat it. I need to get into it and do like more stuff on the surface and just like kind of stop rushing a lot of things and just like sit in the world and really take it all in and get more of an experience.
Like
But
you haven't seen the Don Dons yet.
no, I didn't see the
Yeah,
Don
haven't seen the
Dons.
Don Dons yet. The Don Dons are pretty darn cool.
I think this is a game I'm definitely going to be playing, enjoying for a while. But I'm curious if this will end up being my personal game of the year, because I keep seeing content for Final Fantasy 16, and my God, that game looks absolutely insane for me personally.
Starfield seems
So I am
kinda
curious. Starfield is kind of a game that I think I would enjoy, but it's not really a game for me.
It might
maybe.
be more my alley because I really love exploration.
I love exploration. It's just I feel like the game's too big.
Well,
It has
that
over 1,000 planets.
that it is daunting. I don't know if I'll have time for it. I still haven't played Elden Ring, and I need to play Elden Ring. I just wish I
Elden
had
Ring is
more time.
great.
I just wish I had
One
more
thing
time.
that I think I'm gonna really enjoy about Elden Ring over Tears of the Kingdom is the uniqueness of the new environments. Because I think the art direction for that game is just absolutely off the the wall, like that, off the charts. They have absolutely insane art direction. Also, like the uniqueness of all the enemies you come across is something that I think I'll enjoy more than Tears of the Kingdom. But I'm curious how I feel about just running around the world in general, because it is very fun. At least in Breath of the Wild, actually, I feel like running around in Tears of the Kingdom is, I've had less enjoyment. But I feel like that's just because I felt less want to do so because it's
Oh
the
man,
same world.
build a car with cannons and lasers. Maybe I'll feel better about it then.
That's fun.
Yeah. Um, and I'm just gonna throw it out there. Metroid Prime 4. There's rumors it could come out this year. That's a whole other
Oh
game
yeah.
that I mean, for me, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see how good Metroid Prime 4 is, but I think it's something that could be in the conversation as well. So, um, I mean, if there's a new Mario game, that'll have a chance too. I'm not sure it's coming this year, but
Probably
yeah.
not.
We don't know it until the second half is. So
No, we don't.
it's total mystery. Apparently, there's a rumor that a direct might happen next week, but
Next
we'll
week.
see. We'll see.
Interesting.
But the thing is, last week we got a rumor that it'll happen in July, so I don't know what to believe anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna ask about this rumor because I just heard about it, so I'll look into it. But yeah, I think that's all for now. I mean, we'll be talking about Tears of the Kingdom for years to come. Obviously, you know, there's theories and videos that are going to be happening on this channel. I am very curious about the sages and the divine beast masks. Apparently, I saw some people talking about in the chat. Apparently, they're who was it? Let's see here. Kevin D. The sages are Ruta, Meadow, Rudani, and Naburus. Calling it now. Okay, that's a theory. Masters on High. I heard a cool theory that the divine beasts were named after these sages, like Ruta was named after the Zora sage in Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe.
It would make sense.
Maybe. Now the thing what's interesting is that there could be DLC that kind of helps to fill in some of the gaps in story for Tears of the Kingdom. It also might fill up the world a little bit more. I mean, the world is filled out, but it might add more new things to do. So it's just a whole other thing that might change our opinion on the game. We'll see. But that is it for the evening. Unless there's anything else you want to add, Brandon.
I guess just giving my final thoughts on the game. I think it absolutely improves in most ways, over pretty much every way over Breath of the Wild, just to varying extents and to different levels than I thought. I think this is a game that I absolutely love, but I think that with a different focus, it could have been a game that I was like absolutely blown away by. Which I don't think I would say that I was blown away by Tears of the Kingdom, but I definitely enjoy Tears of the Kingdom.
If Breath of the Wild never came out and it was just Tears of the Kingdom,
then it would be like, you know, craziness.
it would be just insane. It's incredible, but I understand where you're coming from. There is a familiarity, and I think what they were going for is familiarity that feels different, and there is some of that. But I think because of that familiarity, we do kind of maybe go through some parts a little bit quicker. But you know,
Yeah.
as we kind of talked about earlier, as time goes on and we kind of spend more and more time with the game and slow down a bit, we'll get to experience a little bit more and analyze a little bit more, and we'll see how our feelings change. But I mean, I know I love the game, and I know you like the game, but
I think it's
yeah.
great.
It is. It's just funny because like we say that Breath of the Wild is like one of our favorite games of all time, and yet for the last 6 years we've kind of
I
complained
think my
about it.
opinion on Breath of the Wild has changed a lot. I don't think I would consider it one of my, I mean, maybe top 20, but I don't even think it's in my top. It's not number one. It's maybe in my top 3 Zelda games. It's probably number 3, honestly. It's probably not even number 2. I mean, now that Tears of the Kingdom exists, actually, it's not in the number 3 anymore. It's not in the top 3 anymore. There you go. Official. Breath of the Wild is not in my top 3 favorite Zelda games.
Okay, what is your top 3?
My top 3, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, now Tears of the Kingdom. It would have been Breath of the Wild as
So is
number
Breath of
3.
the Wild number 4?
I guess, yeah. That makes Breath of the Wild number 4.
What is, and what's after that? Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess,
After that,
Skyward Sword.
probably Twilight Princess. But maybe a 2D game.
Yeah.
But if you don't count the 2D games, then because I kind of feel like a Link Between Worlds I might enjoy that game. More than Twilight Princess though. Definitely more than Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask is a game I love the concept of, but I hate to play because it gives me anxiety.
I love darkness and fear and terrifying
Oh
things.
no, that's not the part. It's strictly the fact that I have to work under a time constraint. And it's really only a problem when I'm doing something that's gonna take me a while, like a dungeon. I just am so annoyed because I like to take my time with dungeons.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I'm kind of like forced to rush
for
through 'em.
example, if I was playing Majora's Mask, I wouldn't be able to just leave it on like this.
No,
No.
you would not.
Well, if I do the slow time, it would last. It would last a few hours, so maybe.
Yeah.
But I would have to start over once.
It's something that takes a lot of careful planning to play, which is not usually why I play games.
Oh, you know, it'd be really cool though if there's a Tears of the Kingdom DLC that placed a Majora's Mask like mechanic. Oh, cause like, what if
Could be
what
interesting.
what if like the Blood Moon was going to crash onto like what if oh man, it would be so cool if it's like an epilogue story, right? And the epilogue story is that now that Ganondorf has been destroyed, the moon has lost kind of like some sort of, you know, there's something off with the moon now, so it's now going to crash. So it's like literally like Majora, like, you know, bringing that component from the Majora's Mask story, but and there is a time limit. And so Zelda, being the Sage of Time now, having those powers, like she can reverse the time, but it's basically that same sort of angle, and you have to kind of figure out how to solve things beforehand. It would be neat. It would be neat.
I think it could work as like, because it's not like a whole game's worth of content there. I feel like they could make it work and make it fun. Yeah, I don't know.
Be an angle.
For the DLC though, I guess just some quick thoughts on that. I definitely want it to be like more crafted content with like cutscenes and like some nice bit of story or something. I don't want it to just be like more gameplay content. Like I want like crafted sequences.
I want new areas to explore.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, I'm expecting like something more significant than what we got for Breath of the Wild, but they haven't even announced it yet, so it may not even come. We'll see what happens. But that's all for now, everyone. Hope you all have a good night. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you could leave a like, that'd be super helpful. But we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.